I'm continuing my reading. What I'm doing in this series is to read through the entire standard works of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This consists of the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price. I am reading in a chronological order of events, not according to publication or volume, so I will be skipping around a little bit as I move along. I am currently in the Book of Samuel, 1 Samuel. This will be chapter 8. Samuel has now been judging Israel. And he's been a judge for the entirety. All of Israel. He's the first one to judge all of Israel, traveling a circuit every year to cover all of Israel. Now we're coming towards the end of his life. So here we go. Chapter 8. Samuel's sons take bribes and pervert judgment. Israel seeks for a king to rule over them. Samuel rehearses the nature and evils of kingly rule. The Lord consents to give them a king. Now, Israel has not been all that faithful during the time of the judges. This wasn't like a golden age of Israel where they were all living in peace, and they're just falling into wickedness here by asking for a king. Now, Israel had been very rebellious for most of its existence during the time of the judges, and asking for a king is not a new rebellion. It's not some sign of new wickedness. This is just the old wickedness coming back out. So, anyways, let's read. And it came to pass, when Samuel was old, that he made his sons judges over Israel. Now the name of his firstborn was Joel, and the name of his second Abiah. They were judges in Beersheba. And his sons walked not in his ways, but turned aside after lucre, and took bribes, and perverted judgment. Then all the elders of Israel gathered themselves together, and came to Samuel at Ramah, and said unto them, Behold, thou art old, and thy sons walk not in thy ways. Now make us a king to judge us like all the nations. So his sons were not being righteous. They were taking bribes, but they were in Beersheba, so they were judging the southern portion, the southwestern portion of Israel. They weren't judging all over Israel. And apparently he made them judges so that they could kind of take his place, and the time of the judges could continue. But because they're not being good at it, the Israelites come to him and they say, "Well, look, your sons aren't good enough to fill your shoes. You've been great for us, but not all. We're tired of the back and forth with the judges. We want to. I think they were wanting the stability of a king. I don't think this was just, oh, we want to be like others. I think they were seeing the other nations were more stable because they were united. They had a king. They had a central government, and the Israelites didn't. They were 12 separate independent tribes, a loose confederation that were united by the law of Moses and the judges. But even as I said, the judges up to this point haven't been judging all of Israel. They've been regional judges. Samuel's the first judge over all of Israel. And at this time, they seem to have returned to what they were under Joshua, when they had a single leader. When Joshua led Israel, he was the one leader over all Israel, and everybody looked to him to unite the people. After he died, the people kind of fractured and became independent tribes, very loosely bound together. Samuel comes about 300 years later, and he again becomes a central unifying leader who judges all of Israel. They all look to him. And that's why they were looking to his sons to take his place. They were looking at a judge dynasty kind of thing. But they realized his sons aren't going to be good enough. And so now they're asking for a king in order to maintain the stability that Samuel had created. That's what I think I don't think this was them saying, oh, we're rejecting God. Exactly. It was rejecting God, technically. They rejected God and saying, God's not good enough to stabilize us. We need a king to stabilize us. But it was more, it wasn't just, we don't like God, so we want to replace him. They weren't trying to replace God. But they saw the stabilizing effect of a central leadership. And that's what they wanted. That's my opinion. Anyways, verse 6. But the thing displeased Samuel when they said, Give us a king to judge us. And Samuel prayed unto the Lord. And the Lord said unto Samuel, Hearken unto the voice of the people in all that they say unto thee. For they have not rejected thee, but they have rejected me, that I should not reign over them. According to all the works which they have done since the day that I brought them out of Egypt, even unto this day, wherewith they have forsaken me and served other gods, so do they also unto thee. Now therefore hearken unto their voice. Howbeit, yet protest solemnly unto them, and shew them the manner of the king that shall rule, that shall reign over them. Now, I like this. Remember, they wanted a king to judge them. They didn't want a king to oppress them. They weren't looking for a dictator. They were looking for a dynasty, a monarchy that would act like the judges, but would be a hereditary dynasty of central government to stabilize the country. That's my opinion. That's what I think they were looking for. Samuel didn't like the idea. The idea of a monarchy. The judges up to this point had been chosen for their righteousness, not because of who their father was. The only time you had anybody who attempted to be king was the Abimelech, the son of Gideon, and that ended in a horrible mess. So he didn't like the idea, and he goes to God, and God says, well, they've been rebellious from the time they came out of Egypt. This is just another rebellion of theirs, so let them have it if they insist. But first, warn them. Make sure they understand what they're asking for. We can't give it to them unless they fully understand the implications. So now we get Samuel talking to the people here. Verse 10. And Samuel told all the words of the Lord unto the people that asked of him a king. And he said, This will be the manner of the king that shall reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them for himself, for his chariots, and to be his horsemen. And some shall run before his chariots, and he will appoint him captains over thousands and captains over 50s, and will set them to ear his ground, and to reap his harvest, and to make his instruments of war and instruments of his chariots. And he will take your daughters to be confectionaries, and to be cooks and to be bakers. And he will take your fields and your vineyards and your olive yards, even the best of them, and give them to his servants. He will take the tenth of your seed and of your vineyards, and give to his officers and to his servants. And he will take your men servants and your maid servants, and your goodliest young men and your asses, and put them to his work. He will take the tenth of your sheep, and ye shall be his servants. And ye shall cry out in that day because of your king, which ye shall have chosen which ye shall have chosen you, and the Lord will not hear you in that day. Basically, you get a king, you have to start paying taxes. That's actually kind of funny. He warns them, if you're gonna have a king, you gotta understand what this is. And I don't think this is you do get some oppression later on. Kings are very famous for oppressing the people. And you give them that kind of power, oppression eventually will come out. But he's not really talking about that 1/10. That's the same amount that you paid given your tithes. He's basically telling him, look, you want a king, you're going to have to support him. You're going to have to pay taxes. You're going to have to send your people, your children, to work his fields. Because he's going to be king. He's going to be running the country. You're going to have to do what you can to support him. You're going to have to pay taxes now. Up to this point, they didn't pay taxes. They paid their tithings to the Levites, to the church. But they didn't pay taxes to government. The judges weren't taxing people. The judges judged Israel, meaning that they were there when a dispute arose, people went to the judge, and the judge adjudicated the case. He said, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is how we solve this case. And then everybody left. There was no taxes. You might pay the judge for his time, but you weren't taxed for it. Samuel is warning the people, if you want a king, you want a centralized government, you're going to get taxed. And eventually, I do think he is warning them eventually, you are not going to like being taxed. You are going to realize the oppression that taxes cause. But when you do, and you cry out to God, say, oh, we don't want a king anymore, too late. You've got a king now. But I find it very interesting that it is, this just sounds like taxes to me. Back then, taxes would have been paid. Today, we pay taxes just in money, but back then, taxes would have been paid both in goods. So, when it says 1/10 of your sheep, 1/10 of your vineyards and stuff, you pay taxes in your crops, your produce, but also in your labor. And that's all it is. This is just taxes. So, verse 19. Nevertheless, the people refused to obey the voice of Samuel, and they said, Nay, but we will have a king over us, that we also may be like all the nations, and that our king may judge us and go out before us and fight our battles. And Samuel heard all the words of the people, and he rehearsed them in the ears of the Lord. And the Lord said to Samuel, Hearken unto their voice, and make them a king. And Samuel said unto the men of Israel, Go ye every man unto his city. So even after being warned about the taxes and the oppression of kings that comes through taxes, they said, nope, we want a central ruler who can lead all of us. And I think that's one of the biggest things. The king may judge us and go out before us and fight our battles. In other words, that's what they want Joshua back. That's really what they want. They want a single unifying leader who can take them into battle and who can adjudicate the law properly for all Israel, not just local regional judges. They really want Joshua back, but it's been 300 years since since Joshua was alive. Oh, practically 300 years. And so none of them have a full memory of what Joshua's leadership was like. And they look out on all the other nations and they see the kings of other nations and they say, that's what we want. We want that unity we used to have 300 years ago, and the only visible example we can see of it now is a king. So give us the king. We will deal with the taxation. We can handle the taxation. We just want that. And as I said, this was a rejection of God. If the people were faithful to God, they wouldn't have needed that central leadership. That central leadership would have been fulfilled by the priests. But because they turned away from God, because they were worshiping idols, the priests could not act as a central government, because in order for the priests to be their central government, they had to be faithful in following God. They weren't. The next best thing was a king. Anyways, I do find it funny that Samuel's warning against a king is just all the ways he can tax you. So I will see you in the next one.